In 1954, a behavioral researcher named John B. Calhoun walked into a barn in Rockville, Maryland, and started building a paradise. It was designed to be perfect. A quarter-acre pen with unlimited food, unlimited water, no predators, no disease, and no way for anything to go wrong. He filled it with 5 pregnant females and waited. Within 2 years, the Norway rat population had peaked at 200, not 5,000. The pen could have supported thousands. It never came close, and by the time Calhoun finished writing his observations, he believed he had watched something that had never been documented before. Not a population explosion, a population implosion. The rats had destroyed themselves not from scarcity, but from something far harder to name. He called the result a behavioral sink. The world thought it understood what that meant. It was wrong. To understand what Calhoun actually found, you have to understand what he was looking for. He wasn't studying overcrowding, he was studying roles. In a natural rat colony, every animal has a function. The dominant male defends territory, the female raises young. The subordinate males either challenge for rank or disperse outward to found new colonies. The colony is not just a collection of bodies in proximity, it is a structure, a system. Each animal exists inside it at a specific address, performing a specific job for a specific reason. What happens, Calhoun asked, when you remove the pressure that keeps that structure intact? In the wild, the pressure is simple. Resources are limited. Space is limited. If you don't fight for your address in the colony, another rat will take it. The friction is constant, and it is the friction that holds everything together. In Calhoun's paradise, there was no friction. Food appeared without effort. No territory needed defending because no external threat ever came. And the rats, freed entirely from the work of survival, began to come apart. The first thing that collapsed was male behavior. In a healthy colony, males fall into a clear hierarchy. The dominant animal at the top is calm, purposeful, largely non-aggressive. He doesn't need to fight constantly because his position is understood. Below him, the other males challenge, defer, form alliances, and patrol. It is a system under low pressure, but it is a system. Inside the pen, with no territory to patrol and no rival colony to resist, the males began to lose the plot entirely. A third of them became hyper-aggressive, attacking without provocation, mounting other males, invading nests with no purpose. Another third withdrew completely. They stopped interacting, stopped competing, stopped eating with others. They sat alone in corners, in perfect physical health, and did nothing at all. Calhoun had a name for this second group. He called them the probers. The probers were the ones who couldn't find a role and didn't go quiet. They moved through the colony constantly, touching everything, participating in nothing, generating chaos purely from the energy of having nowhere specific to be. They weren't aggressive in any structured sense, they were just untethered. And the females watched this happen and made a decision that Calhoun found more disturbing than anything the males were doing. They stopped. Mothering in rats is not instinct in the way people assume. It is a behavior that has to be modeled, learned, and reinforced by the social environment around a new mother. A female rat raised in a stable colony watches other females raise pups. She sees how nests are built, how intruders are repelled, how young are retrieved when they wander. She inherits a template. Inside the pen, there was no functional template left to inherit. Nesting became erratic. Mothers began abandoning litters mid-rearing. Some failed to nurse. Some moved pups from place to place until they died of exposure. The infant mortality rate in the most disturbed sections of the colony reached 96%, not 96% dying from disease, from neglect, from mothers who had simply lost the behavioral script that told them what to do next. The pups that did survive were raised by females already operating at the edges of their capacity. They were never shown what a functioning colony looked like because no functioning colony existed around them. They grew into adults with no model to follow, no structure to inherit, and no idea what their role inside the species was supposed to be. Calhoun watched this generation come of age and recognized immediately that something irreversible had happened. He kept the most disturbed males for separate observation. They were healthy, their coats were clean, their organs showed no pathology. By every clinical measure, they were in excellent condition. They also never mated, never fought, never built nests, never engaged in any social exchange at all. They moved through the colony as if it were empty, as if the other rats around them were furniture. They ate when food was available and slept when they were tired and groomed themselves to an almost obsessive standard of cleanliness. Beautiful animals, perfectly preserved, biologically alive, and socially extinct. Calhoun wrote about them at length. He was not angry at them. He was something closer to heartbroken because he understood exactly what had happened. Their nervous systems had developed inside a world where every available role was already occupied. There was no fight to learn from, no courtship to attempt, no nest to defend, no loss to survive. And so their brains, which were built to wire these things during development, had simply never built the circuitry. You cannot install later what the brain did not wire during the critical window. They had missed the species. and the species had moved on without them. When Calhoun published his findings, the reaction was immediate and almost entirely incorrect. Newspapers and commentators seized on the obvious reading. Overcrowding causes breakdown. Density is pathological. Too many bodies in too little space produces aggression, neglect, and collapse. Urban planners cited it. Politicians cited it. Architects redesigned housing projects around it. But density was never Calhoun's conclusion. Density was not even the variable he thought mattered most. He had built other enclosures with far higher population densities that did not collapse. He had built enclosures with lower densities that collapsed faster. The number of animals per square foot was not the determining factor. The question was never how many rats were in the space. The question was how many rats the space could give a meaningful role to. His actual conclusion was quieter and more troubling than anything the newspapers printed. He wrote that the critical threshold was not physical, it was social. When the number of individuals requiring roles exceeds the number of roles the system can generate, the excess individuals do not simply wait. They either erupt into purposeless aggression or they withdraw from the species entirely. There is no third option. The colony does not hold. It ends. The food never ran out. The water never ran out. The space never ran out. What ran out was something the paradise had never been designed to provide and couldn't be simply restocked. Something for each animal to actually be for. Here is the part that almost nobody quotes because it does not fit the story people wanted Calhoun to be telling. He was not a pessimist. He did not believe the result was inevitable. He spent the 2 decades after his most famous experiment running variation after variation, adjusting conditions, looking for the lever. He believed one existed. He believed there was something a society could build, or rebuild, or choose that would change the outcome. He called it ideational space. Physical space, he wrote, has hard limits. You cannot simply manufacture more land, more territory, more geography. But conceptual space, the space of new ideas, new roles, new forms of meaning that did not previously exist, that space has no ceiling. A species capable of generating new reasons to participate in itself can outrun the mathematics of the enclosure. The mice could not do this. He believed humans could. He kept building until 1972. He died in 1995, still writing about it. The experiment that made him famous ran from 1958 to 1962. The population peaked at 200 and then fell. The last litter was born before the colony had even reached what he calculated as half its physical capacity. Cause of death, on no document anywhere, was listed as anything other than natural. But Calhoun had another word for it. He said the colony had experienced 2 deaths. The first was the death of meaning. The second, which came years later, was simply the body catching up. The first death is the one that doesn't show up on any scan. The rats never had a choice about what kind of world they were born into. They could not decide to generate new roles, build new structures, or extend themselves into conceptual space. They were given a paradise, and they had no tools for what a paradise actually requires of its inhabitants. Calhoun thought that was the difference, the one that mattered. Whether he was right is still, technically, an open question. The data isn't going anywhere. Neither is the question it keeps asking. What do you do when there's nothing left that needs doing?